So for most of our audience, your publication is pretty well known. But for anyone else that's listening, won't you tell us about yourself and what you do?
So my name's Paul Murphy. I'm the founder of Switch Player magazine, which is also a website. I am closer to 40 than I'd like to admit, but I've always had a particular affinity with Nintendo and Nintendo systems. And my previous venture, which I'm sure we will discuss later on, kind of evolved into what Switch Player became, which is a monthly paid print and free digital magazine that covers everything to do with the Switch.
We'll jump back a little bit. What was the first game console that you ever played? Game or console?
The first game console that I ever played in my memory, because when I was about 4 or 5, I did play on some sort of like older Atari stuff, but I didn't know what they were. The first system that I properly owned was the original Game Boy, shortly followed by the Super NES.
What was your favorite game out of that?
On the Game Boy, I mean, in that kind of era, we didn't have a tremendous amount of money in my family, so obviously these were. I didn't have a huge number of games. Pretty much on the Game Boy, it was Tetris. Well, of course, I had Super Mario Land and Radar Mission and a few other games, but it was pretty much Tetris was all we played on the Game Boy until I got Link's Awakening, sort of like around about 1993, which until Breath of the Wild was probably my favourite game on any system. For the SNES, it was always going to be Super Mario World for me. I mean, both of those games were pretty much in my top 2, for even right up till the Switch came out.
They're pretty amazing games, that's for sure.
They are. So, I mean, interestingly though, I never really got into Link to the Past.
Really?
I've always favoured Link's Awakening over Link to the Past. I mean, Link to the Past is an amazing game, but I preferred the bite-sized kind of nature that Link's Awakening is. I mean, some people might say that it was a little bit more watered down, but for me, that was perfect for playing on the go.
I love both. I think both of those are just amazing games. So tell me this. FIFA football and July of 2012. What does that mean to you?
It was the first time it was the first game I got with my PlayStation Vita.
So what is that? What kind of impact did that have?
I've always favoured handheld gaming. Always. When I was younger, I could never command the time on the telly that I'd want. I mean, my parents were very strict, so I was limited to gaming sort of like at weekends for an hour or so at a time. And as I got older and I was able to play more on some other systems, I was able to play at my leisure kind of thing. And even though I got an Xbox 360 and other systems along the way, I could, in my adult life, I could never dedicate that much time to playing on the TV. I was married, I had children, and the Vita opened up handheld gaming to me in a way that hadn't been done for a long time. And so I was instantly enamored with the little system, and instantly realized there wasn't many people covering it, despite it just being a few months old.
So you started a bit of a blog.
I did, yeah. I did. I just, set up my own little thing. I mean, it wasn't my first attempt at a website. The predecessor to the Vita Lounge was actually the 360 Lounge, where I attempted to do a similar kind of thing with the 360, but it didn't really work. But I did learn a lot of lessons on how to access PR companies and things like that. And then I thought, I'm going to take that knowledge and then just start up my own little blog and review games that I've been buying. And it quickly kind of spiraled into something that one person can't manage on their own.
Was it your intention then at some point, or just a natural, it sounds like a natural progression to begin adding more people into that process?
I mean, my background is in business management. That's what I did for many, many years. And I've always been good at organizing people. And one of the good things that you learn as an effective manager is to surround yourself with people that are better than you are at things. Because then that makes your life and your aim and your objective that much easier to do. So once I realised that, this thing was kind of becoming a little bit popular, I was attracting a bit of an audience, I needed people better than me to write about what I was writing about. And then it kind of like all went on from there.
Okay, so you sort of answered my next question. So it's just to say that the Vita saw its share of stumbles in the West, to be sure, but the fan base for the system is ravenous.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've even with the success of the Switch, the audience is nowhere near as passionate or as dedicated as that Vita audience is. I don't think I've seen an audience as passionate about their little system as the Vita audience. And I think that kind of enthusiasm and desire and determination is kind of what's kept it going even today.
So was there any story or interview that you wanted to do for the Vita that just never worked out?
It was difficult because when you're a small channel or website or something like that, even if you're big, starting to gain a bit of traction and what have you, it's very difficult to access the bigger kind of studios. Sony were always fantastic with providing review code and copy and things like that, but we were never able to secure any kind of major interviews with them or anything like that because they just weren't interested in the Vita, let alone a little website talking about it. But yeah, I mean, it's always you wish you could speak to people and get an idea of what was going on. But even if for nothing else, because it became quite apparent after about 12 to 18 months that Sony had no interest in supporting the Vita. It would have been interesting to have got in touch with somebody to find out why, because there was a lot of voices within Sony that unofficially were champion for the system. Your Adam Boyes, your Shahid Ahmed, and even sort of like Holly Bennett and Sarah Willock. They were always pushing the system themselves unofficially, but the corporate message was one of disinterest, really.
At what point during your kind of process with the Vita Lounge did the idea of a magazine manifest? I mean, in today's day and age when news is really at your fingertips all day long with the internet, that's a different take. And it's interesting to us to see something like that come about, a physical print.
I grew up with magazines. I mean, I'm almost 40. The internet wasn't a thing when I was a child, so magazines resonate with me. Getting something in print every single month, filling you in on the biggest and the best news and the latest reviews, and just giving you ideas and things like that. It makes sense to me. And I'm a big believer of if everybody's making content, like you say, online, information's at your fingertips. Everybody's regurgitating everybody's news. And I firmly believe that if you want to stand out with your content you're producing online, you either need to be better than somebody else or you need to do something different to somebody else. And that's kind of where the evolution of the magazine came from, to try and attract a new audience and maybe, see if we could reach new fans in a different way. And then ultimately that became kind of more of our focus for our coverage.
I mean, I remember growing up having subscriptions to things like Nintendo Power and to EGM, that type of thing, Game Pro. These were that was what you looked forward to every month because of the lack of something like the internet. You didn't know how to progress on a game at a certain point, or you would find out something super secret about a game from either the magazine or from somebody else who found out from a magazine. And it was always cool to see the articles and the pictures. I mean, it was a format that really brought the information that you had no other way to get, which was really cool. So
absolutely, and I think it's kind of there was a lot more choice back in our youth. I mean, there are still magazines today, of course, but they're few and far between now, and none of them are kind of like carrying the kind of rapport that Nintendo Power or over in our side, the official Nintendo magazine, for example, carried. But it's kind of like I liken it to a sport, where if you like sport, you like a team, and you kind of like you have that affinity with that team, and you follow it religiously, and so on and so forth. With magazines, when I was younger, you valued the opinion of these writers. Every month I looked forward to seeing what they were going to say about this game or that game, or what they thought of CES as it was back then, before E3 became a thing. And I valued and really looked forward to seeing what my favourite writers were going to be talking about. And I think that the internet is just a sea of voices now, where you still have your favourites. I mean, a lot of people value sort of what the kind of funny guys say, and Colin Moriarty and Jim Sterling, to name just a couple. But these are people whose opinion do carry a lot of sway. It's like, but everyone else is just, it's a lot of noise, and it's kind of like I miss that kind of era, I suppose.
I think I miss it in a lot of ways too. You did have one heck of a run on the Vita. You guys were able to publish over 500 reviews online. I think you had like 26 magazines. At what point did you decide to parlay those efforts over to the Switch?
Initially, I mean, so it was until the Switch was revealed officially in 2016 in October, I wasn't even sure that I was going to do a Switch website. And it was that reveal just blew me away. And I knew in an instant that this was going to be kind of like, choose my words carefully so I don't upset the Vita fans, but I knew that this was, to a rational, level-headed Vita owner, this is a spiritual successor to the Vita in many regards. It's everything they would have wanted in a Vita sequel. Mm-hmm. And I knew there and then that this was going to be where the audience was going to go. But I did intend on continuing with Vita Lounge in tandem and the magazine. I mean, in fact, we still released a couple of magazines after we launched Switch Player magazine, but it became clear that because essentially the same team was running both in the beginning, we couldn't really focus on both. And we were starting to struggle to get review codes and stuff as kind of like support was dwindling for the Vita somewhat. And on top of that, I had more support for Switch Player. I mean, I'm grateful for every single person that either read the digital version or or got the Vita mag in print. I only had 100 people in the end, whereas now I've got 500 people already supporting the Switch Player magazine. So it's kind of like it was clear that if I had to choose one over the other, it was the most sensible approach was to go for the Switch.
What was your initial reaction after the Switch Direct reveal back in January of 2017?
One of surprise and one of immediate need to go and pre-order it. As I said to you off air before we started, I've always been a big Nintendo fan, but kind of I lost my way with Nintendo around about 2007, 2008, as a lot of Nintendo customers and fans did at the time. I think with the Wii era and kind of like a lack of the games that I kind of wanted on the Wii and on the DS at the time. So I kind of like went in the direction of an Xbox. But I've always had this long hope that Nintendo would kind of rekindle what attracted them to me as a child and as a young adult. And immediately with that Switch reveal, it kind of spoke to me on so many levels. It's like, yes, this is the system for you. And it's kind of like it sounds silly to say, but it's kind of, I knew it was going to be successful, but I didn't know how successful. I couldn't have predicted how phenomenal it has been up to now.
Yeah, their support of indie titles and stuff like that has been quite drawing for a lot of people. It's rekindled a lot of childhood memories playing games on the Switch like Tiny Barbarians and Axiom Verge. It's very old school Nintendo-esque type games.
Absolutely. I mean,
you sort of answered part of this next question. So you pre-ordered the Switch.
I did.
So what launch titles did you get? I'm assuming Zelda, so we can skip Zelda if that's true. But what other titles did you get?
The interesting thing is I told Nintendo what I was doing. So obviously I pre-ordered my Switch, and I pre-ordered Zelda, and I pre-ordered 1-2 Switch, and a whole host of other stuff. And I told Nintendo what I was doing with the magazine, and I then cancelled my pre-order because they told me they were going to send me one. So as part of their support to me, they sent me a Switch and quite a few launch titles, including Just Dance, which I didn't. It's still sealed in my pile of shame, despite many requests to for somebody to keeps asking me to video myself playing it. That's not happening anytime, Brad. But yeah, I told my wife that Nintendo was sending me one, and she said, "Oh, okay, then you can buy me a dog." So my Switch money went on a dog for my wife.
Well, my wife told me I could buy a Switch if I bought Just Dance, so yeah. that worked out.
Yeah, well, while we're recording this, my wife is playing on my Switch at the moment. She's playing Overcooked 2. She absolutely loves Overcooked and Overcooked 2, so that's keeping her busy whilst we're doing this.
So creating a magazine has got to be exhausting. When do you sleep?
Well, like I said at the top, surrounding yourself with people that are better than you is key to all of this. I have an amazing designer and I have an amazing team, and we're 19 issues in now. Issue 19 launches next week. Everything's kind of routine, and we have deadlines and we have a structure. So it kind of like it goes like clockwork as long as everybody's kind of doing what what they need to do.
Can you walk us through what an average publication cycle looks like?
We release issues every 4 weeks to the dot now, so it's not just monthly. It's I don't know what the release schedule is like in America. I imagine it is the same, but it's in the UK you have 13 numbered issues throughout because there's 52 weeks obviously. So every 4 weeks a new issue launches, and the last one of the year is usually Christmas or something like that before it all starts again. So we've with this year, we kind of nailed this 4 week cycle now. We have a cut off where any reviews that we've published on the website after X date, they don't go into this issue, they go into the next one. And I'm constantly talking to many freelancers about what features they want, and they all work to a deadline as well.
How does that look from just, the actual process of taking something and putting it into print and all the editing and artwork and all? What is that kind of process for you guys?
It's incredibly challenging. I mean, as I say, all of us, this isn't a full-time job for any of us. This is something we all do as a hobby and just for fun. And I think one of the reasons I have a big team now is so that we can all still have fun doing ultimately what the whole point that we do this is to play games and to find out about new games. And when you're doing something like this, sometimes it can be quite draining. So obviously I have a big team of editors that will take it in turns to edit specific sections of the magazine and proofread things and stuff, so that constantly over the course of a week, sort of like we're working on this section's done, okay, that's put to bed, this section's done, then put to bed and stuff. I mean, it's nothing I was ever trained to do. It's kind of something that we just kind of, you learn from each issue, with each month kind of getting better and better and more refined as you learn. You just get better learns with this worked this month and this didn't work, and so on and so forth. The same as anything really. The time constraint is incredibly, I can't convey into words how much pressure you're under, because you've got to get it off the print, otherwise the subscribers aren't going to get it on the day that you said you're going to get it to them, and so on. It is a challenge, but I do enjoy it.
Well, what are some of the other challenges aside from timing that you face with publishing a physical magazine?
One of the biggest challenges is we have a huge international audience. So of the nearly 500 people that support us on Patreon, well over half of them, I'd probably say 2/3 are international, with probably half of them in the US or Canada, and the rest being in the UK and the rest of the world. So obviously, when I'm posting issues out, there's still another 5 to 7 days typically before it's going to get into the hands of the international supporters. So sort of like we are trying to work on that, but in order for me to do that, I'm going to need to get an earlier deadline so that they can. It's a balance between how early do I have my deadline and cut off for news that's already going to be outdated by some people that think that, magazines can't compete with the internet anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
it's kind of like, trying to find the balance between getting it out on a set day and the international people getting it at a more prompt time, It's trying to find that balance, because sometimes people don't understand that. I mean, we've got quite a lengthy thing explaining this on our Patreon, and the amount of people that sometimes don't read information on something that's a product that you read is amusing.
I'll say that one of the things that stands out about Switch Player, at least to me, is the amazing cover art. Can you tell us a bit about what goes into the process of choosing a cover?
Yeah, I mean, with VitaMag and Vita Lounge magazine, as it was, we use just stock standard artwork, as a lot of magazines do. And other than issue 1 of Switch Player, every issue has been custom designed because I wanted it to be striking. I wanted it to stand out. It's nowhere near being on store shelves or anything like that, but I wanted it to have that kind of look where somebody would see it on a shelf and go, wow, I want to buy this magazine. And I hope that over the entire run so far, people do kind of feel that with the art. As regards to choosing the cover, typically it's kind of like the biggest game that comes out that month. Initially, it was kind of like the highest reviewing score from an issue, but then I thought it kind of might be better if it was just kind of like the biggest game, because the biggest game may not necessarily get the best review score. So, for instance, issue 4 was Ultra Street Fighter 2, and it wasn't the highest scoring game in that issue, but probably the most suitable for a cover, if that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
So once I kind of designed, set the idea of which cover I'd like it to be, initially it was just on a month-by-month basis. I then get in touch with a variety of designers that I'm in touch with to kind of like freelance the design for us. I was going to say for now though, I've got a list on our forum in our staff room of potential covers. So we're now working sort of like 3 or 4 or 5 months ahead in the planning stages. So, for example, the current issue, which comes out next week, is Octopath Traveler. Issue 20 is going to be Monster Hunter. So we're already in the process of designing that cover. But then issue 21, am I going to get a review code for Dark Souls? Am I not? I'm talking to Bandai at the moment, because if they can get it to us, then that will be the cover. If they can't get it to us, then it'll probably be Mario Party 11 or something. It's kind of like these conversations that we're having with, how early can you get us review copy in the kind of planning process.
At this point in time, you're the only magazine that's dedicated 100% to the Switch. So how does that feel?
It feels pretty incredible. And on top of the supporters that we have for the digital PDF and the print version, there are also thousands of people that read it for free on issue. It was very important to me that I was able to offer it for free as well. So obviously a little behind where the paid supporters are. But to try and garner as much of an audience as I can, but also to get the information out there, because the main reason I do this is to make sure that the information is out there. And although we're not the only unofficial magazine for Nintendo, Nintendo Force is obviously well known to a lot of people, and for good reason, because they're amazing. But we kind of we're different to Nintendo Force because we solely focus on the Switch. And I'm sure that at some point they will kind of tile down their alternative coverage for other things. But for now, it's amazing knowing that we pretty much are in the position we're in.
And how large is your team right now? And are you still growing, or do you think you've reached a nice balance point?
It's difficult to find the balance, because obviously everyone's volunteers and writing for fun, and because they enjoy it, everyone gets a token amount of money each month for their effort and stuff. But we're just enthusiasts doing something that we enjoy doing, and hope that other people enjoy reading. You don't want too big a team, but I've found myself continually needing to increase my numbers, because Nintendo have seen fit to release nearly 100 games every month on the eShop. And considering we get review copy for around about 70 or 80% of all of those, it's quite difficult to stay on top of everything that's happening.
Now, you kind of talk about what your team members are doing here, because they're getting these review copies and they've got to get in and play and do that. And I keep thinking about some of the timeliness of this question with recent things. So ensuring that reviews are unique can be quite difficult, because there's a lot of things out there that people want to say that, and there's a lot of people saying them, so it's going to be hard. Ultimately, there's only so much that anything can be said about any given topic. And in the wake of recent scandal with the plagiarism at IGN, how do you protect yourself from that same possibility?
I think the first thing that you have to, when you're working with a team and you're working, for all intents and purposes, I run Switchplayer like a business. So it's like it's a job, but it's not, it's a hobby. But I find that it works because it's a job. And in a job, you have people you trust around you. And I think that's key. You have to trust that the people that are working with you in your team are all working with the same objective in mind. I think that the way that IGN dealt with everything that they had to deal with was fantastic and appropriate. And the way that they're continuing to do it is the only way they could do it. I've seen a lot of comment on, the editor-in-chief should have done this, and the reviews editor should have done that. I know from myself on the website, I'm doing a full-time job. I'm a foster parent in real life as well. I'm a dad. I'm a husband, and I do this as a hobby. There's only so much that I can realistically do. In the instance that I found that something would be to a similar kind of degree as the IGN stuff, I would probably deal with it exactly the same way. You can only apologise to the parties involved and immediately remove anything that's kind of associated with that. But you have to kind of trust that your team wouldn't do that to you. I saw, as many of us did, the video in response to the allegations and such forth and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, one of the comments that the individual made was doing research for reviews. I've never looked at anybody else's reviews before writing a review. Why would you allow somebody else's opinion to sway or influence or even guide your own review? Your opinion on a review is based on your experience with the game. If you need research, then read the press releases, read the supporting information that comes with the review, you know, and just keep playing it, or reach out to the developers themselves if they'll respond to you. You shouldn't let somebody else's opinion determine how yours goes. No, it's I've never looked at anybody else's review before writing something, and to me, it's amazing that somebody would do that.
Yeah, I think that that entire scandal hit pretty close to home, I'd imagine, for you and your staff.
And everybody in the industry, whether they're an enthusiast, whether they're a professional, you know, the
it hit us. It hit us.
But it hits trust. It hits trust, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, when you've got somebody that's paid in a privileged position that isn't even passing off their own opinion allegedly on a subject, it's going to call the whole thing into question and damage relations. This is a scandal that's going to be remembered for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So earlier this year, your magazine underwent some upgrades to the look and layout. Would you say that there's more changes that people should be looking forward to?
I would say so. I mean, we're constantly looking. I mean, you can't just completely overhaul your design every few months. I think you've got to kind of have a degree of consistency. And I think that in 2017, we had our set design. And then we were able to get in touch with Will Overton, who is a legendary game designer here in the UK. Game magazine designer. He's worked at Rare. He's back at Rare now, and we had the opportunity for him to help kind of shape our look, because one of the biggest criticisms with Switch Player was that it looked amateur. So obviously I wanted to address that going into 2018. We're already, as I said a few minutes ago, with regard to covers, we're already working months and months ahead on things. So, you know, if anybody has any ideas or feedback, we're always open to listen to any kind of criticism, constructive specifically, because we've got no shortage of people that tell us that they love us. But finding people that will tell us, do you know what, I don't like this, I don't like that. They're the people I want to hear from, because although you can't make something for everybody, you can't please everybody, you can do a best approach to try and aim somewhere in the middle so that you kind of appealing to as many people as possible. And that's kind of like, you know, they're the people I want to hear from, because they might say, yeah, this is okay, but, you know, you need to work on this. And that's what, you know, I'm looking at going into 2019, because you can never rest on your laurels because you become complacent. And, you know, I think that you constantly need to be pushing yourself, because if you're pushing yourself, then it keeps on making you challenge yourself. And when you challenge yourself, you end up producing better content.
Are there any games that came out on the Vita that you think are just so amazing as handheld titles that you would like to see them make their way to the Switch?
I think a lot of the indie stuff that appeared later in life is probably already in process of coming over if it isn't already out. Obviously, in the early days, there were a lot of tremendous games that Sony themselves were involved with before that kind of all petered out. I think they're unlikely to come to the Switch, but, you know, something like Tearaway. I love Tearaway. I think Tearaway is probably Sony's most Nintendo-like game, and I think that it's a travesty that it didn't kind of attract the audience that kind of game deserved. But it's the kind of game you could see Nintendo making, in my opinion. I'd love for something like that to be on the Switch. But I think that everything that I loved about the Vita initially, the Switch is doing its own kind of thing with a lot of that kind of approach.
So what you said earlier that your wife was playing Overcooked 2 on your Switch. So what game are you currently playing on your Switch, and why is it not Galgun 2?
Galgun 2 is kind of like not the kind of game that I could play around my young children or my foster children, I feel. At the moment, I'm reviewing Banner Saga 3. I loved the first one. Second one was okay, but I thought it was kind of like very middling, as I wrote in my review. I'm playing 3 at the moment, and I think 3 is just amazing. It's a brilliant way to end the game. But to be honest with you, I'm struggling to not play Fortnite. I'm spending probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day playing Fortnite. All of my spare Switch time is at the moment going on that silly little game. It's
our Discord, we had to create an entire category of channels just for the Fortnite.
Yeah, my 14-year-old looked after the child. He is a massive Fortnite fan, and he got a Switch for his birthday. He just turned 14 just a few weeks ago, and he's like, "Oh, that Switch is amazing! I need a Switch. I need a Switch." We currently have 3 in the house. My 11-year-old birth son has a Switch as well. My soon-to-be 14-year-old daughter wants her own Switch. My 8-year-old daughter wants her own Switch. It's all gone Switch mad in this house. But yeah, I'm just playing a tremendous amount of Fortnite and stuff. I mean, I'm not sure if you're going to talk about it in a minute, but I have every physical game for the Switch that's released in the UK. I always fancied the idea of having at least one system where I owned every game for it. And because I'm a grown up now, and because I'm in a better position in my life, I can afford to buy every Switch game.
One of us.
Yeah, that's precisely
initially. Initially it was every game, but I very quickly realised that I couldn't commit to every collector's edition, every Japanese version with an English language release, every American game. I mean, Mr. Poland is constantly tweeting about 249 or 250 releases. I think he said today. I'm on about 150. And it's like, I already know how much I've spent to get 150.
Yeah.
and the very, very thought of I'm missing 100 if I wanted to be a true collector, is, my wallet is telling me no, but I'm sure we'll have a conversation at that point. I mean, in the last year as well, I managed to get every single amiibo as well. So,
wow.
It's, that cost me around £2,500 all in all. Which, my wife doesn't know that. If you're listening, darling, I'm lying.
Yeah. But you're saying you don't want to try to afford these special editions, like a sword that comes with the game for a random reason.
You're just tempting me now. I mean, it's I've around about when they released about 8 or 9. So you're talking about 9 months ago, before it kind of like the release schedule really kicked up a gear. I think there was Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild has many different collector's editions depending on where you live in the world. So how far do you want to go with that? Sonic Mania originally got released with a silly Sonic statue on a Mega Drive, but a download code. And it's like, when I was kind of like Argos in the UK were doing the collector's edition of Fire Emblem Warriors for about 40 quid, so it was about half price. So I nearly jumped, and I started looking at what the other ones that I'd missed out on were going for. And Sonic Mania was £270 on Amazon, and I was looking at the standard was it Master Edition of Breath of the Wild, and someone on eBay wanted 250 for that. And I very quickly realised I was going to be spending thousands and thousands if I was going to achieve a true complete set. It's like, I saw John tweet the other day that there were about 3 different versions of Lego Marvel. One with one figure, one was a Master Edition or something. It's like, where'd you draw the line? You know, it's and I haven't got the shelf space.
Yeah, not to mention that if NIS is putting out a game, it's going to have a special edition also.
Absolutely, and limited run as well. I mean, you know, initially when we did an interview with Limited Run, I mean, I think what they do is amazing. But when we originally spoke to Doug, and he was saying they're probably only going to be doing 1 release a month, and obviously now it's kind of turned out to be 2 a month plus the collector's editions. Sometimes there could be more releases. You know, it's kind of where'd you draw the line? You know, it's difficult. And as I say, to date they've still only shipped the 1. And how many have they put on sale so far? 6, 7, 8?
To be fair though, my Mercenary Kings and Flint Hook are both on the way, so they've shipped 3. But absolutely, and they've been talking about Saturday Morning RPG as well. I mean, I know they've been talking a lot about that as well, and I don't doubt them. These guys have earned people's trust and respect for what they've done for the Vita and PlayStation 4 scene over the last couple of years. You know, it's these things are coming. These things are coming. It's just, where'd you draw the line? You know,
that's a tough question to answer, because I think that really depends on each individual's wants and needs for collecting. I have a different line than Cyrix does, and Cyrix has a different line than JP does, and you know, so on and so forth down the community. And the one thing that we try to share with everyone about the community is no matter where you draw that line for yourself, whether you just collect games published by Nintendo, whether you collect every single international release, whether you just collect English-only titles like myself, or whatever it is, we welcome you. Even if you have 5 games, 2 games. You know, everybody starts somewhere, and you saw these and you had a love for it. So I think for us, what we try to do is just include everyone, and we say, hey, you know, if your collection is 20 or 200, you're a welcome addition to our community, and here's more information in case you decide to get interested in more of this, or at the very least to help you make decisions that are discriminatory. You know, you can choose, you can actually have the information to be armed with what to purchase, because we know that a lot of people can't buy everything or won't buy everything. So you're doing the same thing that we're doing. We're arming people with information. We're hoping that people take that information, right, and use that to make the most informed decisions they can.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's good that you're inclusive like that. You know, you are a collector, whether it's 200 games or whether it's 5 from a specific series. You know, it's because not everybody can afford to buy every game. I mean, I can't, but it's difficult because you look at some of the stuff that Limited Run are doing, and you're thinking, you know, that they're all amazing games, or that they're worthy of a physical release. I mean, especially West of Loathing. West of Loathing is an amazing game, well deserving of a physical release, especially that collector's edition. But then I look at my collection and I've got some absolute tosh that is just there just because I'm collecting it. You know,
Monster Jam.
Like, yeah, Monster Jam. You know, Cartoon Network, Battle Crashers.
Oh yeah, Troll and I.
Troll and I. Don't even get me started on Troll and I. And then there's horse riding games, which I'm sure are aimed at a specific audience. I mean, Hello Kitty Racers and All Star Fruit Racing, and you know, there's some rubbish that I've bought just for the sake of buying. You know, and it's kind of like you'll know, you'll get it. I mean, there'll be Barbie games, and it's like, how can I hold my head up high when a Barbie game comes out? You know, it's
that's going right in the center of my shelf. What are you talking about?
We've got one guy in our Discord that is extremely excited about All-Star Fruit Racing.
No joke. He really is.
Well, to each their own. At the end of the day, I mean, games are subjective, aren't they? You know, one man's Breath of the Wild is another man's Troll and I. You know, it's like we don't all like the same things, and that's why these games do ultimately find an audience.
So we're winding down the interview now, and usually what we do at the end of the interview is we have one question that's kind of not related to the topics that we're talking about. It's just a random, off the wall question, and then we just get a random fun answer. So
now I'm gonna cut in on this and say that this one is controversial to me.
Yeah, this is a controversial topic. So recently, we, the hosts of On the Shelf, had some words on Twitter about food topping. So we don't want to go down the rabbit hole about whether or not it should be a punishable offense to like or dislike pineapple on pizza, but we need a clarification on this. Which goes best on anything? Is it pepperoncinis or banana peppers? And if you don't like either or haven't tried them, you can feel free to lie to our faces just so one of us can gloat over the other.
I've never tasted either of them. I'm probably one of those guests that you'd hate. I've got an incredibly poor diet. I'm very fussy. I can thank my parents for that when I was a child, turning my nose up at everything. So I wouldn't have eaten either of those.
All right, then do you have an opinion on pineapple on pizza then?
Pineapple on pizza, I don't think I know anybody that likes pineapple on pizza. I think is one of those weird things where what's it kind of doing there? But to the initial question, I think pepperoncinis sounds like a cooler thing.
Okay, so you went 1-1 on that, because Soul is a pineapple person, and I don't think it belongs on pizza. And he's a pepperoncinis guy, and I prefer banana peppers. So
this goes unresolved. We're gonna have to take this to the next guest.
Yeah, and all things balanced here.
As perfectly balanced as all things should be.
Oh, very good, very good. You're right in line with where I would hope you would be. So,
I'm hoping once this is wrapped up. I mean, you guys have had Infinity War on digital release for a couple of weeks now. It's only just come out over here on digital release, so I'm hoping to get to that in a minute, because I've only seen it twice in the cinema. I'm desperate to see it again.
I've watched it 4 times now, and it gets better every time.
there's the little details that you didn't see the first time around. And when I saw it the second time, you're seeing the stones individually glow when he's using them and stuff. You know,
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like little things like that you didn't realize. And I'm on the Marvel Studios Reddit regularly to see all sorts of stuff. And it's like even now they're seeing stuff that they didn't see before. And it's like, what an amazing film! You know,
Truly
it's-
amazing. Truly amazing. I know that we're our audience, a lot of them are Marvel fans. Not everybody, but a lot of them are. So it's kind of interesting because this is I say the potential. It has the potential to be one of the greatest movies of all time, but it really depends on how they're going to follow this up and what comes in the next Avengers.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I thought. I mean, it's been out a few months now, so I don't want to spoil it for those that still haven't seen it. But
Yes, please
it's kind
don't.
of- They did everything that you would hope they would do, and it's like, how do they follow that up then?
I know.
Because the next film is either going to be the best film ever, or it's going to be a massive disappointment. There's no in between. It's either they're going to completely blow this one away with what they follow it up with, or it's just going to be a letdown.
I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope.
I mean, these guys are the best things that Marvel have ever to happen to the series. I think that ever since the Russos came on board,
Yeah.
the caliber of the other films have upped their game as well. I mean, Thor Ragnarok is a personal favourite, but I think that the whole of the end of Phase 2 and Phase 3 kind of moving on has really upped what these guys are doing with these films.
Well, it really started with Winter Soldier when they came on to Winter Soldier. And
Yeah, absolutely.
You could see what they pulled off there.
But
just
they've been
amazing.
able to take risks, though. They've been able to take risks with the material and with the audience because the audience are now invested. And I think that a lot of what works with Infinity War is that you get more out of it if you've seen the previous 18 odd movies before.
True.
But you can watch it on its own. You can get the gist of what's happening from its own as a standalone film, and I thought that worked quite well as well.
Yeah.
It's you get more out of it if you're more invested, but that's the mark of a good film, and anything like that. If you understand the subject material more, then the film's going to mean more to you. The same as a game. If you understand the subject matter more, then it's going to mean more to you when you watch it. But you can still watch it as a standalone film and enjoy it.
Yeah. Wow. Look at you bringing it back to gaming.
I did.
Yes,
yeah.
see, that's why I enjoyed the Deadpool game. I don't know a lot of people who did, but I enjoyed the Deadpool game just because I know all of the backstory and history about what's going on, and then in the game I saw the little nuances that brought back memories of the stuff I've read in the comics.
I mean, I loved Spider-Man 2. I played it on the GameCube for a similar reason. It took a bit of creative liberty with the film, but a lot of the film stuff was in there. But it's kind of like it felt like Spider-Man for the first time. You actually felt like you were playing out that kind of role. They executed it so perfectly, and it's kind of it's one of the things I'm looking forward to for the new Spider-Man game that's almost out. I'm hoping that it'll make me feel the same as I did when I played that.
Yeah. These, the things that they can accomplish with being able to tell a story a certain way now, because classic gaming had, some limitation. There's only so much you can do on older consoles to a certain point, right? So now that modern consoles are capable of just about anything, it can present you nearly anything that they desire to present you on the screen. It can really take you to a place that you couldn't go previously, and the ability to present that story and integrate a lore into a game so thoroughly is simply astounding now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're getting to a point now where you're only going to be able to take the graphics so far. It's like the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro. These graphics are getting pretty good now. And it's kind of like, but there's only so much that the human eye can actually see. So it's like, what resolution is enough resolution for us to be able to still take gaming as far as it can be? For me, as photorealistic as these games are starting to become now, I still hope that they stick to the same kind of formula that's worked for gaming for many, many years. Because some games now are just becoming kind of like interactive experiences, and it kind of like you lose the magic of what gaming is. And to your point about sort of like graphical prowess and stuff like that for former systems, it's interesting that growing up, I remember it differently. So it's sort of like I got a SNES Mini. And I'm playing the games now, and all my children are like, look at those graphics. Those graphics are awful. But I don't remember them being awful when I was a child.
Well, they weren't.
It's like, and it's like, the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, and it's like you're playing Wipeout for the first time. It was incredible. But you look at it now, it's jaggy, it's it's like, but I don't remember it. It's kind of like, I suppose it's the same as kind of like looking at standard definition black and white films versus color films and stuff like that. It's kind of, because it's all you had when you were younger. Remember it different, perhaps, but trying to explain to my children that each of these things was state of the art when they were released.
You can't have what you have now without having what you had then.
No,
that's
absolutely. True. It's all an evolution, isn't it? And it's
it really is.
It comes back to what I said about the magazine and pushing yourself constantly and not being content with what you have. But there comes a point where you can only go so far.
Well, gosh, I feel like we could just go on talking about these types of things forever. There's so many enjoyable topics surrounding all of this. But
absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to come on again, but I think I definitely want to converse with you guys off air.
we are happy to have you on again at some point here. We want to see where you take the magazine from here. We know that a lot of people were super excited to just see the advent of your magazine, and we want to know what the future is going to hold for you. Is there anything you can think of that you want to share with the audience before we disconnect along those lines? Is there anything else that you have in mind?
I mean, I just want to make it the best that it can be. I'm never content with how something is, and I will continue to make this for as long as there's an audience that wants to buy into it and support it. But I know there's room for improvement. I mean, I've had a lot of people saying we want more news, because the internet has all the news that you want, but people can't click on multiple websites and multiple links all day, every day. And, somebody might click on a link one day and then forget it a few months later, like, Doom Eternal. Somebody a couple of months down the line might forget that Doom Eternal came out. But if it's in the magazine in print, you might go back to it and just, whether you're sitting there looking for an idea for a game, or you wanted some reading material when you're in the loo or something, it's like, and then you say, oh yeah, that game's coming out, and I think that's a lot of what people miss on the internet, because it's so there at your fingertips. You don't really remember to go back and look at it again. Once you've read it, and then that's parked. And I think that books and magazines and things like that, they are eternal. Whereas the internet, although it's going to live on indefinitely, you seldom go back to the same thing that you've looked at before, in my experience. And I think that having that information there that's always going to be a reference for people to go back to is important.
We agree. Well, thank you again for all of the time that you've spent with us today.
Absolutely not a problem.
We greatly appreciate it. We definitely want to have you on again sometime in the future. And again, this has been Paul Murphy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.